All right. Man, it's good to see everybody. I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, and I probably shouldn't say anything. I should probably just go ahead and let it go. But there's like this piece in me that says, no, you should say something. But did you guys notice whenever Vinny came up here to get ready to talk, did you see kind of what happened there? It was so cute. It was just incredible. Is he here? Oh, he is there. Hi, Vinny. So, yeah. So anyway, okay, Vinny, here's the thing. You come in and you grab the microphone and you come over here and you know that the video is going everything and you squat down as if you really need to. That was bad, wasn't it? I should probably get off right now. Oh, man, I feel so bad right now. I'm sorry, Vinny. But I was sitting back there, and I was laughing about it. I thought, that is so funny. I love that. For one, there's nothing behind you to see. So I wasn't quite sure what you were trying to do. But nonetheless, okay, so does anybody want to go give him a hug? You guys can go give him a hug. Just go ahead and nobody's going to give him a hug. Somebody should probably give him a hug. Okay, I'll go give him a hug. Here. Come here.
I'm trying to work on my squats.
I love you, man. Okay, sorry. All right, so we're in the middle of this series, right? We're in the middle of this series entitled Life Cheats. And basically what we're doing is we're taking a look at those things that God gives us, those little, they're kind of like little nuggets in life that God gives us that if you will do them, it will make life better. It won't necessarily make life easier because there are moments, there are times when life, it's just kind of a skate and you kind of, oh, this is cool. But no matter what, trouble comes into life. And I don't want anybody to walk away from here thinking, you know what, Pastor said that if I do these things, life's just going to be better all the time. And that's not it. But if you will do them, it'll bring more joy to your life. It'll make your relationships better. It'll bring freedom in spiritually. It'll bring freedom emotionally. It's amazing what happens. But the thing is that we have to do them. And what we did that first week, if you remember, you probably don't because that's like 3 weeks ago, and we had baptism last week. And baptism just resets everybody's minds, right? It's like, wow, that was an incredible weekend, just an incredible weekend. So I want to, just a little bit, I want to kind of recap a little bit of that. In the first week, what we did is we put the emphasis on doing. Basically what we said is that it's not enough to know what God says to make life better. You actually have to do it. And we took a look at the passage that James had in James chapter 1, verse 22, if you remember that, right? James is the brother of Jesus. And listen to what he says. He says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves, but do what it says. Which is kind of interesting because every time that I read that, I think to myself, James is really clear here, isn't he? I mean, he tells us it's not enough just to hear. I hear people all the time, they'll come up to me and they'll say, Pastor, my life is just a mess. And I'm looking at them, I'm thinking, but look at the decisions that you have made. Look at the things that you have done. And you know better, right? You know. I know that they know. They could probably quote me verses about these things. If somebody else were to come up to them and say, hey, should I do this? They would say, no, don't do that. And yet we have a tendency to fall into those things. And James says, don't deceive yourself just by hearing what it is that it says. And we deceive ourselves all the time, don't we? Sometimes it has nothing to do with the Word of God. For instance, have you ever had one of those situations, and I'm 50 years old, so I've had several cycles like this in my life, where I made a decision, I'm going to get healthy, right? You ever had one of those situations where you just decide, I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to do this, things are going to change, I'm going to change my lifestyle. So what you do is you go down to the store and you find yourself a treadmill. Right? You check all the treadmills out. Maybe you even get on it and kind of bounce up and down a little bit. You walk on it a little bit and things like that, and you figure out which treadmill you want. And then you say, I want that one. You pull out the credit card. You buy the treadmill. You put it into your truck. You take it home. You unload the treadmill. You put it into wherever it is that you're going to place it, right? Because you've been thinking about this. I'm going to get healthy. I got a spot for it. You put it in its right spot. You want everything to be done. You set it all up, and then you stand back, and you feel healthier. Isn't it? Come on, isn't that true? It is true. You put it all up and you go, I did it. I think I've lost some weight. Or you go down and you join a gym, right? You go down and you join a gym. You start writing and you fill it out and you write out your first check and you say, here you go, and you're walking out the door. You feel healthier. Or you go home and you replace all of the Oreos with kale. And you feel depressed. I mean, healthier. See, it is possible in your preparation to do something that you know is going to bless you, it is possible to actually walk away and feel somewhat like you've done it, and yet there's no real change. And we do it with church all the time. We do it with church. I've done it with church. You know, you get out of the habit of going to church. You've been absent from church, and then all of a sudden you say, you know what, I really need some church in my life. I need to be down there. I need to hear the words of the songs. I need to hear the preacher. Man, I got to be there. And then you show up at church because you're kind of hoping that God's going to bless you just for you being here. You listen to some songs, and you're moved. God does something in your heart. You go, oh, man, that is awesome. It's like this touch, and you go, oh, that's so incredible. And then the pastor gets up and he preaches, and maybe it's convicting or maybe it's just encouraging. And you go, oh, wow, that's fantastic. And you walk out the door, and you feel like I'm making a difference. You feel like God's doing something in my life, like I'm changing. And yet you really haven't done anything. On the way home, someone cuts you off, and you go into a 5-minute tirade, and your kids are back there going, oh, my goodness, what did they just say? There's no real change in your life. It's not what you know, it's what you do with what you know. And when you take, listen to what I'm about to say to you, because this is so true. When you take God's word, when you take his truth, when you take the things that we're talking about, and we're only going to cover 5 things, man. There are thousands of things that you could apply to your life, and these are just life cheats that you could say, these are incredible, these are awesome, these will make a huge difference in my life. But if you'll take that truth and you begin to do it, and you obey him, and when your obedience, and listen to this, when your obedience intersects with God's faithfulness, something happens in your life. There's a change that begins to happen. Things begin to go differently. And you begin to experience the life that God wants you to experience. But you have to do it. Now, 2 weeks ago, Andrew kind of kicked us off, right? That first week we talked about the fact that you have to do it, and then Andrew kicked us off by talking about encouragement, and that was awesome. What an incredible message that was. I wasn't here, but I had the opportunity to hear it. And basically what he said is that something beautiful happens when you become an encourager. Something beautiful happens inside of you, and something beautiful happens inside of the other people around you when you begin to encourage the people around you. When you become an encourager, something happens in you. Something becomes lighter. Your eyes begin to see things differently. It's amazing how that happens. Man, if you didn't hear that message, I encourage you to go and listen to that message. Now, Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a look at something that I believe has the power to transform your relationships. I really believe this, and I'm just going to tell you up front, this is going to be really, really difficult. If you're a regular attender, you might be somewhat used to that, but I don't know. We're probably going to step into some places where you're going to go, oh my goodness, why did he talk about that? If you're a guest with us, I am so sorry. I'll just tell you up front, I am sorry. But listen, we're going to talk about trust. We're going to talk about trust, because the truth is, and we know this, and we're not talking about trust between us and God. We're talking about trust in human relationships. And we know this, we know that trust is the bedrock of all relationships. Whether it be at home, at work, with your friends, whatever, that your relationship with people is only as strong as the trust that exists within the relationship. And many of us in the room, matter of fact, I would dare say most of us in the room, we struggle with trust. We have a difficult time with trust. And part of it, and many of you have good reasons, right? Like I could give up the mic today and say, why don't you just come up here and tell us your story about the people who betrayed you, the people who did something to you, the people who said that they were going to do something, but they failed to do it. I want you to come and I want you to share that. And you could come up and you could go for hours talking about the people who have betrayed you, right? And it is such, I understand that you have a reason in your mind, and you have a reason legitimately to say, I have been betrayed. I have had a bad experience. Maybe it was with your ex-husband. Maybe it was with your ex-wife. Maybe you've had a bad experience with a dad or with a mom. And no matter what the situation, it just feels as though I can't trust anybody else. But if you were being honest, and that's really what I want us to do here today, I want us to be honest. Your lack of trust wreaks havoc on all of your relationships. you may not want to admit it, right? Right? I mean, you may want to say, no, yeah, I don't trust those 4 people, but it doesn't bother me at all in my relationship. It does. It does. It harms everything. Because whenever we can't trust somebody, when we can't get to the place where we make a decision that we're going to trust, then what happens is that just undermines all of the relationships that we have in our lives. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at a popular passage. As a matter of fact, this is a passage that you may have had it read in your wedding, or maybe just possibly, if you didn't have it in your wedding, you have more than likely attended a wedding where this passage was written, or was read. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 13, which 1 Corinthians chapter 13 is known as the love chapter. Very good. And the reason it's considered the love chapter is because Paul explains what love is. And the truth is, everybody in the room, we're kind of like the band Foreigner. We want to know what love is. Okay, I really thought that would get more. Let me try that again. We are in the room, everybody in the room, I can't even do it again. We're like the band Foreigner. We want to know what love is. Okay, forget it. So let's just jump into this. Hold on, let's jump into this. Now, as I read this, and here's what I know about you. As I read this, there are going to be some of you that are going to hear this, and you read this passage all the time, right? You go to weddings, and people will read this, and you just let it kind of flow, and you don't ever really think about what the words are. Today, I'm going to ask you to actually think about this, and as you read this, here's what's going to happen. There's going to be this thing that's going to stir up inside of you, and you're going to say, whoa, no way, that's too extreme. That is not meant for me. So I just want you to hold on. I'm just warning you ahead of time. So here it is. Ready? 1 Corinthians chapter 13. We're going to begin in verse 4. It says, love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. And it keeps no record of wrong. In other words, there is no filing system when it comes to love. Oh yeah, well, you know what? Last week you did. I remember May 12th of 2014. Love doesn't do that. Love keeps no record of wrong. Verse 6. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. And in other words, what that means is that love is not trying to catch somebody doing the wrong thing, sitting back and saying, I knew that you'd do that. I knew that you'd let me down. I knew that you'd take credit for that. But love looks for an opportunity to catch people doing the right thing. And then Paul goes on, listen to this. It always protects, always trusts. That's our word, right? Trusts. Always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. And at this point, there's a part of me that would say, stop, time out, Paul. Hold on. You used a word there that I don't think you meant to use. So you used the word in the Greek, it's the word panta, and what it literally means is always or at all times. And Paul, there's no way that you meant always. Always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres, works hard to protect the integrity of the relationship. Love wants to trust. Love always hopes. And love doesn't give up. And another translation in the New American Standard, this is the way it says. It bears all things, it believes all things, it hopes all things, it endures all things. In every relationship, oh, please hear me say this, and it doesn't matter who you are, right? It really doesn't. You could be somebody who you just have fabulous and phenomenal relationships, or you could be somebody who says, you know what, people suck. They're just bad, man. I don't even like being around them. I hate being in the same room with other people. I just hate them, right? And no matter what it is, in every relationship, whether it be with your friends, with work, with your family, every situation, there are these two things that happen. There are those things that the expectations, in other words, this is what it is that you said that you would do, or this is what it is that I think you said that you would do, or this is what it is that I assume that you said that you would do, and then there is your experience. This is what it is that you did. This is what it is that happened, right? So in every situation, in every relationship, let me see if I can move some of this stuff here. In every relationship, we have what is expected or what you expect, and then we have what it is that you experience. And inevitably, almost every single time, there is a gap between what it is that we expect and what it is that we experience, right? I mean, especially if you're one of those people who are you're so detailed in every little situation, in every little place. And if you're somebody who has a difficult time trusting other people, then no matter what it is, whenever you fail to do something, this gap becomes huge. And what Paul tells us is that in the gap, when there is a gap, we choose what it is that we're going to put in the gap. To which I know most of us in the room, we would say, no, Pastor, that's not true. I'm not choosing what's going in the gap here. They're making me put something in the gap. Now, stay with me. Please, because this is where it's going to get really, really hard, and it's going to get difficult, and I know somebody's going to approach me afterwards, and they're going to say, yeah, but you need to hear my story, and you're going to tell me this story, but just hear to the end and hear what it is. In every relationship, there are the expectations and there are the experiences, and there's always this gap. And what Paul tells us is that you get to choose what goes in the gap, and you say, no, that's not true. They failed me, so therefore they forced me to not trust them. They failed me. They didn't do what it is that they said that they were going to do, and they made me not trust them. And the truth is that you choose what goes in the gap. That the gap always exists. And in some cases, you choose to still trust. In other cases, you make a decision that, no, I'm not going to trust. I'm going to distrust. But in every situation, you get to choose what it is that you're going to put in the gap. And Paul says that love looks for an opportunity to believe the best rather than to assume the worst. Research says, listen to this. Research says that healthy relationships, especially marriages, both parties go to extremes to believe the best about the other party. In healthy relationships, especially marriages, both parties go to extremes to believe the best about the other party. And when you think about it, and this is so hard. It's hard for me to even say it. I'm just going to be honest with you. Relationally, nothing good comes from not trusting. Some of you go, whoa, stop. That's not true. See, when I choose not to trust, then I protect myself. I get that. I understand that. But relationally, if you value a relationship, when you come to a place and you say, I am going to not trust you, then in that place, what you ultimately, because distrust is a rejection, and rejection always ends up pushing people away. It closes the door in the situation. And God designed us, God designed me, God designed you to be acceptance magnets. We are drawn to environments and to relationships where we feel accepted. We see this in kids, right? Come on. I remember whenever I was growing up, I've told you this before. I think we moved 9 times in 8 years. And what that meant, it was from the time that I was like in first grade all the way up until I was in 7th grade. And during that time, it meant new schools, new classrooms, new friends, all of those things. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you guys, and maybe you had the blessing of being able to be in the same place for your entire life. But for me, whenever I would enter into those situations and I would walk in looking for friends, inevitably I would be drawn to the ones that seemed to always get in trouble. And it wasn't because I was a troublemaker, because oftentimes I would look back at it and say, why did I pick these friends? How did I get to this? And the reason that I picked those friends is because they were the most accepting. Because everybody else, they're all sitting back and they're watching the new kid and they're saying, okay, what is it that they're going to bring to our group? What is it that we want things to increase in our group. If they're cool, if they're a jock, whatever the situation, we want to have them on our on our team. But we don't know and we want to hold off. But you know what? The people who are getting in trouble, they're just looking for more people to get in trouble. And we are acceptance magnets. And when somebody opens the door and they say, listen, I want to trust you, or I do trust you, then it draws us in. And I know some of you are sitting there saying, but Lance, they're not trustworthy. They're not. And I understand that. But no matter how bad the situation, oh, please hear me say this, no matter how bad the situation is, you still get to choose what goes in here. You still get to choose what goes in the gap. No matter how much they have caused you to distrust them, no matter how badly they have hurt you, you still get to choose what goes in the gap. And some of you, before you can trust, you need to have a conversation, right? Some of you are here, and listen, I'm not saying that this, well, I am saying it, but this isn't something that I'm making up on my own. This is something that God says. Listen, love in relationships that you value, relationships that you want to continue, relationships that you want to have or you want to grow, you need to get to a place where you trust. And some of you, in order to get to a place where you're willing to extend trust to somebody or where it is you're willing to trust them, you need to have a conversation. And maybe what that conversation needs to go, it needs to go something like this. You know what? I really want to trust you. Those are huge words. See, when you go to somebody and you say, listen, I just don't trust you, what you have done is you've just completely slammed the door on the relationship. If it is a relationship that you really care about, you've just slammed the door, because ultimately what you do is you say, you reject them, I don't trust you, and oftentimes people say, well, then I'll just go off and do whatever it is that I'm going to do. There's power in saying, I really want to trust you. And your best chance for restoring, for healing, for making the relationship stronger is to believe the best. And Paul says, I know this sounds extreme, but if you value the relationship, make every effort to believe the best. And some of you are saying, but Lance, I can't. I just can't. They've hurt me too badly. They've betrayed me too many times. I just can't trust them. You know what God says whenever you can't trust somebody? When somebody has hurt you that badly? It's pretty cool, because Jesus is the one that explains it. He tells us in Matthew chapter 18. He says, listen, if somebody hurts you that badly, if somebody hurts you and does something against you, and it brings you to a place to where you say, I cannot trust them, if you can't choose to trust, you have to choose to confront. Jesus tells us that when somebody puts us there, whenever somebody hurts us in that way, then we need to go and have a conversation with them. And here's the problem. Here's where most of us are at. We don't talk to people, we talk about people. And can I just share something with you? And I've done it. Listen, this is not a finger-pointing session. I have done this. And in the attempts to sit here and to try to figure out what's going on and to try to paint somebody in a bad light because they've hurt me, and in the opportunity of telling things and saying things about somebody else, then what ends up happening is I just get madder and madder and madder, and I increase this gap. Even though there was an expectation, and then there was some place where my experience was less than what the expectation was, and the gap actually wasn't that great. Whenever I go to somebody else and I begin to talk to them and start saying things to them about what it is that this individual has done to me, the gap increases. And Jesus says, no, that's not the way you handle this. Because love wants to trust. Jesus says that if you can't trust, you have to confront. You go to them and ask for an explanation, and you assume that there's a good one. I know there must be a good explanation for you doing what you did. There has to be, right? You say, but Lance, I'm not a good confronter. That's okay. Most people aren't. Matter of fact, research, and I don't know how they get this research, this is kind of an odd thing, says that between 5 to 8% of people are like confrontation. In other words, they can't wait for confrontation, right? Yeah, this is going to be good. So here, now listen. If you're not a good confronter, the good news is that you'll probably be really good at it. See, let me explain. Because have you ever been confronted by somebody that liked it? That's not a good thing. It's never a good time. At least it's not a good time whenever I've had somebody who really likes confrontation. They just can't wait to get in front of me, right? I walk away hurt, beat up. But if you don't like to confront, oftentimes you will take the steps necessary to make sure that you're not stepping into it to hurt somebody, but you're stepping into it to reconcile the relationship. We have to choosing to confront is one of the most loving things that we could do. So either you will close the door on the relationship, and that gap is going to get larger and larger until something explodes, or you can confront and protect the relationship. Now let me turn this around. Let me turn this around on you. Isn't it true? And everybody in the room, and you may not think that this is true, but I guarantee you that if I were to follow you around a little bit and just kind of ask some people and talk to some friends of yours, or at least some ex-friends of yours or something like that, and we just kind of had these conversations, isn't it true? Isn't it true that in those times and in those moments whenever you failed to do something, right? Like you promised to do something, or maybe somebody assumed that you were going to do something, and you didn't even know that you failed. You didn't know that you didn't come through. And maybe you did, and you thought that what you did was enough, but you end up failing. And you create this gap, and you're not even sure how big the gap is. You think that the gap's kind of small, and you think it's not that big a deal. But isn't it true that if you hurt somebody else, you disappoint somebody else, and you don't know that you've disappointed them, isn't it true that you would rather have them come and talk to you than to go out and talk to other people? Isn't that true? It's so true in my life. I mean, there have been moments and times whenever it got around to me, third or fourth person, whenever somebody comes to me and says, hey, you know what? So-and-so's really mad at you. And I'm going, oh my goodness. For one, I didn't even know that I hurt them. And for two, why didn't they come to me? Why is it that it had to go out and spread throughout everywhere? See, love trusts. Love goes to extremes. So what does this look like? This week I was reading and I read about an organization that they make trust a big deal. Trust is a big deal in their organization. They believe that strong relationships come out of trust, and that out of strong relationships comes more collaboration, more encouragement, and there's better production. So this is what they've done. They've come up with 5 commitments. And listen, I'm gonna put these up on the board. I encourage you to write them down, because truthfully, I think that these work for any relationship. I think that they work for a relationship, whether it be in a family or friends or whatever the situation is. If we could ever get to a place where we make a decision, you know what, this is the way I'm going to live my life, it would change our relationships. This is such an incredible life cheat. So listen to this. 5 commitments. First, when there's a gap between what I expect and what I experience, I'm going to believe the best. When there's a gap between what I expect and what I experience, I'm going to believe the best. Before anything happens, before there's even a gap that is created, before you can do anything to disappoint me, I'm going to make a decision that there was a good reason for it. I'm going to believe the best. That's what love does. That's what Paul tells us. I know. See, I know. In your mind, you're thinking, whoa, stop, time out. That can't be what Paul meant. That can't be what God meant. It just can't. I'm telling you, this is a life cheat that if we will begin to apply it to our lives, it will change your relationships. Because when we extend trust to somebody, and even if it comes through those conversations or through those confrontations, and we get to the place to where we establish that relationship and we can trust again, it opens the door and it gives us the opportunity to have deeper relationships. And here, I got to say this, and I was planning on saying this towards the end. This affects all of you. See, right now, you're all thinking about that individual, right? There's that one person, and you're thinking, surely God's not talking about that one. I believe he is, but here's the thing. That one and the fact that you have chosen to distrust that one has filtered into all of your relationships, and because it has filtered into all of your relationships, that's why you can't have deeper relationships. Because you can't learn to get to a place where you can trust. Number 2, when other people assume the worst about you, I will come to your defense. Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if when you do something, and maybe you meant to, maybe you didn't mean to, maybe you just fall short, I don't know, and then somebody misunderstands that something, and that's kind of the situation, right? Somebody misunderstands it, and then they begin to talk amongst one another. They begin to talk about the situation. They begin to talk about you. Wouldn't it be cool if there was somebody in the group that understood your heart and knew you and said, whoa, stop. Let's go talk to him first. Let's go talk to her first. Let's not keep talking about this. Number 3, if what I experience begins to erode my trust, I'll come directly to you. If what I experience begins to erode my trust, I will come directly to you. I'm not going to talk about it with other people. I'll come directly. When other people are talking about you, I'm not going to agree with them. I will come to you. Number 4, when I'm convinced that I will not be able to deliver on a promise, I will tell you ahead of time. When I'm convinced that I will not be able to deliver on a promise, I will tell you ahead of time. When I know that I'm going to create a gap, I'll call you, I'll email you, I'll text you, I'll let you know. And then number 5, when you confront me about the gap that I have created, I'll tell you the truth. When you confront me about a gap that I've created, I'll tell you the truth. Man, aren't those good? I mean, if everybody lived according to, and listen, there are some of you right now, and you're sitting there, and you're not the person who's really wrestling right now with the trust issue, with the fact that, you're the person who has hurt somebody. And you really wish that they would trust you. You're sitting there going, man, I wish that so-and-so was here. I wish that they would just, give me that trust and everything. Listen, there's a part that you play in this, right? When somebody comes to you and they say, listen, I'm really struggling with trusting you. I really want to trust you. You need to be honest in those situations. Don't make up excuses. Be truthful. Bridge that gap. And what I've discovered, this is what it's amazing. When you go to somebody and you look them eye to eye and you say to them, I really want to trust you. Inevitably, most of them say, I really want to be trustworthy. I really want to be trusted. And I know that there are some of you here that, and again, you have been betrayed so deeply. And I don't know what the situation is. Some of your situations I do know, but some of you, maybe you've had somebody in your life who have gone through some addictions, and they have lied to you, they have stolen from you, they have hurt you in so many ways, and they've asked for trust again and again and again, and they have just totally destroyed your trust, and I get that. I understand. Some of you have had other situations. I've had people lie to me. I've had people steal. I've had people do but I get it. I know. You could sit there and say, well, you have no idea. Right? I mean, and you're right, I don't. I don't know your situation, and your situation is probably far worse than mine. But here's what I do know. That inability to trust is killing all of your relationships. At work, there are people that you can't get real with. In your own family, there are people that you can't go deep with because you can't trust them. Wouldn't it be nice to get to a place to where we begin to extend trust to one another? That's what God's saying. That's what the Apostle Paul, he said, but that's just too extreme. He says, yes, I know. Love is extreme. Now, before you unfriend me on Facebook, some of you might have already pulled out your books, or your phones and done that, but before you unfriend me, I just want you, I want you to think for a moment. And I want you to answer this question. How big is the gap that you have created between you and God? How big is the gap that you have created between you and God? And yet, He loves you. As a matter of fact, you count on that love. You need that love, right? Right? As a matter of fact, it's His love that ultimately gives you the motivation to begin to do the things that He wants you to do, right? I have conversations with people all the time. They make all kinds of decisions, and the gap gets larger and larger, and then before you know it, they're coming to me and they're saying, I want to do the right thing. I've got to stop. And when you get to talking to them, they will tell you, I can't believe that God loves me in this situation. You need that. Now, what if that's true for all relationships? What if it's true that what motivates people to get to a place of being trustworthy is the fact that you love them? That when you love somebody and you extend trust, it brings them to a place where they begin to do. It works for you. Right? Listen, I wrestled with this so badly, but then I ultimately came to that truth. I want somebody to trust me. I want people to extend that out to me and say, you know what, I know you screwed up, you messed up. Let's do it again. It works for you. Jesus says in Luke chapter 6, verse 31, He says, do to others what it is that you would have them do to you. And the crazy thing, if you look that passage up, you know who He's talking about? He's not talking about your best friend. He's not talking about your wife. He's not talking about your cat. He's talking about your enemy. Isn't that incredible? He's saying, treat your enemies the way that you would want to be treated. If we will ever get to the place to where we begin to try to extend trust to people, it'll change your relationships. It really will. And I know, because the whole time I was preparing this, I kept thinking to myself, no, stop, because I could think of those individuals, those ones that I just struggle with and I just have such a difficult time with. And I had to step away from that and say, yeah, but where does that spill over into my other relationships? And it does. Somebody that I see and they remind me of that, and then before I know it, I can't trust them, and that just hinders the relationship. Paul says, love always trusts. So here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. I'm going to challenge you just for a week, even though God actually challenges you for life. But just for a week, I'm going to ask you to do this. I want you to lead with trust. Would you do that? Just lead with trust. And if you can't trust, listen to me. If you can't trust, have a conversation. If you can't trust, don't talk about them. Go talk to them. And see where it goes. If you value the relationship, don't close the door with distrust. Don't do it. So if you have your connection cards, on the back side of that connection card, there's a place where it says, I will choose to trust, because I get to put what goes in the gap here. I will choose to trust. Would you just fill that out? Check that off and say, I'm going to try this week. I'm going to choose to trust, because I know in some of your lives, because I know you. Some people have come to you and they've talked to you and they've tried to do things in your life to be a part of your life, and you have pushed them away. And people have come to me and say, why do they do that? It's because they don't trust. Wouldn't it be cool to have better relationships? Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, God, if we were honest, oh, Lord, this is so hard. Right now, there are people going through our minds that we are thinking, God, not them. God, no way, and never them. And yet, God, I'm not sure that it's as much about them as it is about people in general. Just learning to trust. Just learning to give up and to allow you to do things in our relationships that we never thought possible. So God, please help us. The truth is we want to be people who lead with trust, who love others the way that you love us. God, please help us. For Lord, I ask this in your precious name. Amen.